They called him Itzamnah, a name carried like smoke through jungle air, whispered with both reverence and fear. Born under the full eclipse, in a village carved from vines and stone, he wasn't like the other children. While they played with sticks and beetles, he sat beneath the stars, silent, watching. At the age of 7, he stopped speaking for 3 full days. When he returned, he told his mother something strange. The moon bled last night and the gods were crying. She laughed nervously, like any mother would, until the village's moon priest reported the same omen, on the same day. From that moment, they said the stars whispered secrets to him. Or maybe they screamed. At first, the villagers thought him blessed. Chosen by the gods, perhaps. Touched by Kukulkan himself. But then came the dreams. Disturbing dreams. He saw the great pyramids crumbling into dust. Ceiba trees, the sacred trees of life, twisting and shriveling. He dreamed of rivers flowing backward, and of his own face, melting in the fire. At night he cried in his sleep. By morning he barely spoke. One day, in early spring, when the trees should have bloomed like flames, the great ceiba tree in the village center stood completely bare. Not a single leaf, as if something had drained it overnight. The elders gathered in silence, eyes wide with old fear. They turned to the boy. They said he must be opened. The ritual. Bloodletting. An offering, they said, to calm the spirits who had entered him. He was only 10. They led him to the ceremonial altar, carved from limestone and dried blood. No screams, no resistance. Just a quiet boy who whispered to the wind. They pierced his tongue with stingray spines, let the blood drip into bark bowls, chanted around him as smoke curled from burning copal resin. Let his soul speak, they prayed. Let his demons leave through the wound. But Itzamnah, he smiled. Not a full smile, just the corner of his mouth, like he knew something they didn't. That night the village shaman offered him something sacred to eat. Raw frog liver, bitter, green, and still twitching. Itzamnah, gagging at the smell, blurted out, "Wait, I've just seen a vision. A 2-headed snake will enter the temple if I eat this." The elders paused, blinked. Dark humor danced in the air. Surely the boy was faking it. They let him skip the meal, this time. But the next morning, the temple priest ran screaming into the plaza. A 2-headed boa, rare and hissing, was coiled at the altar steps. Coincidence? Maybe, but no one made him eat frog liver again. The villagers now watched him differently. Some feared him. Others followed him. A few whispered that he was the harbinger, a walking prophecy stitched in human skin. And Itzamnah, he watched the sky. Every night the stars seemed louder, the moon more distant, the jungle less alive. One evening he whispered to the wind, "They're coming, but they don't walk, they burn." And that was only the beginning. Before the fear, before the blood soaked the temples and the jungle swallowed their gods, there was glory. This was the time of Tikal, of Kalatmul, of Palank, names now half buried in vines and silence, but once louder than thunder. Stone cities rose like mountains. Temples scraped the heavens. Their kings walked in jade masks and jaguar skins dripping in gold. And illusion. The Maya had tamed time itself. They measured eclipses centuries ahead, mapped the stars with such precision that even modern astronomers whisper their name in respect. They built aqueducts, roads, and cities in the jungle, without iron, without wheels. They lived with the stars, and they listened to them. But not all were listening for the right reasons. Itzamnah, now 12, was taken to the capital by royal guards. He had spoken a prophecy, one that saved a governor's son from a collapsing temple. And so, they brought him before the king, a boy among giants. Jade columns, golden altars, murals painted in blood and brilliance. But beneath the scent of incense, something rotted. The capital was nothing like the village. It was alive and dying down at the same time. They dressed him in white robes and gave him a title, royal seer, spiritual advisor. At 12, he whispered dreams into the ears of kings, and what dreams they were. He warned them, the gods grow restless. But the kings only laughed, not out of joy, but arrogance. You see, they believed they were gods. One king ordered 1,000 slaves to build a pyramid higher than the tallest tree. Another demanded a new sacrifice each day. Children with painted eyes, fed to fire as drums beat through the night. Itzamnah watched quietly. He watched the priests drink from skulls and call it divine. He watched as queens wore human teeth like necklaces. He watched. And he listened. Then it came, a royal wedding, a ceremony meant to unite two mighty kingdoms, dancers in feathered masks, chants that rose like thunder. But the sky had other plans. As the bride was lifted toward the altar, the sun vanished. A total eclipse, black as obsidian. The crowd froze. Itzamnah had seen it in his dreams, weeks before. He had begged the king, "Do not wed during the dark sun. Something watches, something forgotten." The king laughed, patted the boy on the head and offered him roasted monkey tail. But that night, a scream rang out from the jungle temple. A hunting party had stumbled upon something ancient, a buried altar, one not listed in any codex. Its stone was darker than night, wrapped in vines that pulsed like veins, carved into the face, a god no one remembered. No name, no mouth, only eyes, many eyes. They unearthed it. They brought offerings, and then they started dying. One by one, priests, servants, warriors, found cold, stiff, their faces twisted toward the heavens, as if they had seen something, and could not forget. Whispers filled the palace. "The Forgotten One has returned. We have unearthed what was meant to remain buried." The boy knew, but Itzamnah said nothing. He sat beneath the stars, silent, watching, and listening. The city still danced. The king still feasted. The gold still shimmered. But something had shifted. At first it was subtle. A drought that lasted just a few days longer than usual. Crops that didn't ripen quite right. A few birds missing from the morning chorus. Then the corn stopped growing. The sacred maize, the very soul of the Maya, turned to dust in their hands. Wells that had run sweet and deep for generations ran dry overnight. Healers could not explain it. Priests blamed rival cities. The king blamed the wind. But the villagers, they started blaming the gods. Itzamnah, now a teenager, still carried the weight of whispers. But those whispers had turned into screams. He saw it in dreams. Jaguars drowning in molten fire. Rivers filled with teeth. The moon falling into the sea. He stopped speaking these visions aloud. Instead, he carved them into stone, secretly hiding them in caves and under temple steps. If found, it would be treason. But he no longer feared men, only the sky. The king, now aged and angry, sought answers elsewhere. He summoned a dozen seers. They bowed, wept, and told him what he wanted to hear. The gods are pleased. This is a test of loyalty. It is the fault of the outsiders. They lied, because truth in this kingdom got you sacrificed. And sacrifice and was returning. At midnight, beneath the obsidian moon, the high priest gathered the nobles. They brought forward a virgin girl, painted in blue, her eyes wide with terror. Drums beat like a dying heartbeat. With a blade made of volcanic glass, they opened her chest and lifted her still beating heart to the sky. The priest smiled. "Still hungry," he whispered, as blood dripped into the sacred cenote. But the sky gave no answer. The drought deepened. Meanwhile, a jester, known for laughing a little too loud, mocked the gods in front of the court. He dressed as Kukulkan, the feathered serpent god, but stumbled drunk and called him a feathered chicken. The court laughed. Even the king chuckled. That night, the blood moon rose. The jester vanished. Some say he ran. Others swore they saw his body hanging upside down from the ceiba tree. His face turned skyward, his mouth wide open, as if still laughing. But no one could find it by morning. Then it came. A comet, red as spilled blood, long as a serpent's trail. It cut across the sky for 3 nights. The people fell to their knees. The priest sang louder. And Itzamnah just closed his eyes. He had seen this comet in his dreams, years before. Not a sign, not a blessing, a death sentence. He knew. The sky was writing the final chapter, but no one could read it yet. It started with a whisper, then a scream, then fire, far from the capital and the outer cities. Something broke. The rains hadn't returned. The gods had gone silent. But the kings still demanded blood. So the people, the builders, the farmers, the forgotten, turned their blades upward. One by one, the great cities began to fall. Yucatán burned. Quirigua was gutted. Yaxchilan vanished without a sound. Temples were looted. Priests were dragged from altars and thrown into their own sacred cenotes. Kings were found headless in their jade beds. The gods no longer ruled. The rage of man did. Itzamnah, now older, quieter, watched it all from the shadows. He saw the prophecies unfold. Fire where there should be water, bones where there should be corn, and in every darkened sky, the eyes of something waiting. When the capital began to riot, he didn't stay. He fled into the jungle, carrying only a jaguar skin satchel and one final scroll, his last prophecy, one he had never dared to read aloud. Weeks passed. The forest grew thicker. The silence grew louder. Then he returned, back to his city, hoping to warn those who remained. But when he arrived, there was nothing. No fire, no battle, no bodies, just stillness. The city stood untouched but empty. Torches unlit, markets full of rotting fruit. Dinner tables, still set. Tikal, once a crown of Mayan glory, was now a tomb without corpses. He wandered, whispering the names of friends. He found only echoes. And then, in the central temple, carved freshly into the altar stone, a bat with outstretched wings, eyes hollow, teeth long, a name scratched beneath in blood. Kamazots, the forbidden god, the bat lord of death, feared even by the priests. Erased from temple walls, banished from ceremony. They said he lived in the dark between stars, feeding on forgotten souls. Itzamnah dropped to his knees. This wasn't man's rebellion. It was something far older, something hungry. He ran. To the last great city-state still standing, Uxmal. Its towers still shined with gold. Its markets still buzzed. Its king still wore feathers like flames. He begged them to listen. They're not dead, not gone. They've been taken. The gods we forgot have come back. They called him mad, a jungle lunatic, a ghost in dirty robes. They seized him, tore the scroll from his hands, and sentenced him to be forgotten. At dusk, beneath a crumbling temple, they dug a hole. Deep, cold, waiting. They threw him in. They placed the scroll on his chest and covered him in stone, alive. Above him, the temple began to crack. Below, in the dark, he whispered the final lines of his prophecy to himself. Not fire, not war, but silence and wings. Centuries passed. The jungle took everything. Roots cracked the stone temples. Vines strangled the sacred roads. The names of kings faded from memory. The stars forgot their worshippers. But the scroll remained. Modern day. Yucatán Peninsula. Deep in the forest, a team of archaeologists uncovers the entrance to a collapsed temple. Beneath centuries of moss and rubble, a hollow chamber. Inside, a skeleton, curled, clutching a jaguar skin satchel. Unbroken, untouched, and inside that satchel, the scroll, perfectly preserved, as if someone had just written it. They call it the final prophecy of the Maya, but it isn't in any known dialect. No one can read it, except one, Dr. Elisa Maren, archaeologist, linguist, skeptic. She dreams of moons that bleed. She hears whispers in windless rooms. She wakes with strange symbols burned into her memory, the same symbols found on the scroll. She begins to translate. I spoke. They did not listen. The gods grew bored and ended the game. No one knows who wrote it, but the tomb matches the legends. The drawings match the stories, and one phrase is etched again and again across the scroll's final pages. I am the last witness. Dr. Maren stays longer than the others. She begins hearing footsteps in the ruins at night. She swears the trees whisper her name. She begins speaking aloud in a tongue she never learned. Her dreams return. This time, she's not alone. There's a boy, dark eyes, strange smile. He says nothing, but points her toward the temple. And every night, he gets closer. Locals begin avoiding the site. They say they hear flutes in the dark, see lights with no fire, and shadows that fly without wings. One worker finds a bat carved into his tent post, its wings freshly scratched. Before she leaves, Dr. Maren writes in her journal, "What if we didn't unearth a civilization, but awakened something that chose to sleep? A final sound. Wind? Whispers. Or a voice. The game begins again.